Welcome to my vlog.
I'm sure you're all probably thinking the same thing. What did I just click on? Before you click off, just give me a sec to explain. My name's James, aka the Kung Fu Punta. I'm 22, just graduated college, and now I'm playing poker full time. Figured if I was going to do something high risk, might as well do it now and document it as I go. Both for entertainment and for me to look back in 10 years and be like, yeah, I did wear that panda costume in the freezing cold just to hit a golf ball for this intro. Anyways, here are the hands. Happy holidays and welcome to my first full vlog. We're playing some 1-3 at Horseshoe in Baltimore and we sit down with $400. After 3 limps, we raise things up to $20 with ace-jack offsuit in the big blind. They all call. The flop is queen 10-9 with 2 diamonds. I flop open-ended and decide to c-bet for $30. Only the button ends up calling, so we're going heads up to a 3 diamonds turn. This completes the front door flush, and although I only have 1 diamond in my hand, I decided that it was better to take the more aggressive route being out of position. I have lots of flushes in my range, and I get a lot of folds from marginal hands when I double barrel on this card. So I decide to bet out for $55, and they quickly fold. Nice to take down the first hand. A few hands later, there's a $6 under the gun straddle, the +1 player limps, and I raise things up to $30 with ace-king offsuit. Only the limper calls, and we're going heads up to an ace-9-5 flop with 2 clubs and a spade. I make a standard continuation bet of $25, and he calls. The turn's a king, so now I have top 2 pair, and when he checks to me, I bet again for $55, and he quickly folds, so we take down another pot again. The very next hand, I'm dealt king-jack of diamonds in the cutoff, raise things up after a limp, get called, c-bet on the flop, and take it down. Okay, this is the 3rd hand in a row I'm raising, and the people at my table might start to think I'm a maniac, which is a good thing, I think? I'd prefer it that way, so I could get paid off in later streets, but it folds to me in the hijack, and I raise things up to $12 with 10-9 of diamonds. The button calls, and the big blind calls. So we're going 3 ways to a flop that comes queen-jack 4 with 2 hearts and a diamond. So we flop an open-ended straight draw and a backdoor flush draw, and it checks to me, and I bet out for $15, to which only the big blind calls. The turn's a really interesting one when it comes the queen of diamonds. So now the board is paired, but now we have an open-ended straight flush draw. I'm in position, so when he checks to me, I have the decision on whether or not I want to bet. And I think betting here is good for a bunch of reasons. 1. We have 10 high. Even though I have a bunch of equity against many of his holdings, at the end of the day, I have 10 high, and if the river comes the ever so friendly deuce of spades, we're stuck with a nasty river decision if we want to bluff or not. If we bet and take it down, that's always a good result when you have no showdown value. 2. Building a pot. I want to build a bigger pot in the case that he does have a fairly strong hand and I do end up hitting one of my many outs. I think that I would be able to get paid because backdoor flushes and straights are less obvious and more hidden than if a front door flush hits. Plus I have a fairly aggressive image, so people might be thinking I'm over bluffing. And 3. Fold out his junk. There are still so many hands that he could have floated with on the flop that would have to fold to another barrel on the turn. Hands like a weak jack or a 4. He could also have a hand like 10-9 with no flush draw and wouldn't be getting the right price if I barrel again. With this being said, I decided to bet out for $40 and my opponent ends up just folding, and it's nice to take a pot down with 10 high even though I felt like I was going to get there. This next hand's one of the more interesting hands of the session, and it comes in just the next orbit, when I look down at pocket 8s in the cutoff. The hijack raises to $10, I call, and both the blinds call. So we're going 4 ways to a king 8-5 flop. So we flop middle set on a king high board, and what gets even better is the hijack continues by betting $15. With such a dry flop, I don't think raising is such a good option because it would cause many alarm bells and could even get a hand like a weak king to fold. So I decided to just smooth call. This also invites along the small blind to come along, so we're going 3 ways to a 3 of diamonds turn. When it checks to the hijack and he bets out for $35 again, to this small of a sizing, even though it being a rainbow board, I think I have to raise here to build a bigger pot, so I bump things up to $85. The small blind folds and the hijack calls. Going heads up to a 6 of diamonds river, the board remains relatively dry and harmless, so now it's a matter of sizing. My raise on the turn is very strong, and when he calls, he must have a hand like king jack, king queen, ace king, so I want to bet a size targeting those hands. When he checks, I don't think I could go for it all, which is about $300, but I bet out for $180, and after about 30 seconds, he calls. We scoop in a massive pot.
100. Come on, good.
Next interesting spot. There are 4 limps, and the small blind makes it $15. I'm in the big blind with ace king of diamonds, and I 3-bet him to 45. I think this is actually a little small with all the dead money in there, but he calls. The flop is jack 8-8 with 2 hearts. Checks to me, and I bet $30. I chose to bet a third pot, but with these paired boards in position and no backdoor flush draw, maybe I could settle on checking here. He calls, and the turn is a jack. It goes check check, and when the river comes to 5, he bets out for $45. And even though this is such a small sizing, there are missed hearts, and ace high could be good, I decided just to let it go because to me it just felt like a value bet. Looking back at this, the speed of my check on the turn was indicating that I didn't have a very strong hand, and maybe he saw that as weakness. So when there was a 5 of diamonds on the river and he bets up for $45, I decided to fold. But looking back, I think that he could have been bluffing with a lot of heart combinations that missed and wanted to fold out hands like ace high or exactly the hand that I had. Let me know what you guys think. Moving on to the next hand, there's an $8 button straddle and I'm in the small blind with aces. I decided just to call in hopes of popping in the old-fashioned limp re-raise. And yeah, I know, the limp re-raise strat is pretty cringe, but my fake justification for this is that button straddles are hard to maneuver with, and I'm punishing them because they kill action. Moving on. Well, a new player who just sat down to my left raises things up to $25. There's a call in the cutoff, and I make it $80. Both of them end up calling. The flop is 8-6-6 with 2 clubs. I'm not really afraid of that much 6x in my opponent's range because most of their hands have like Broadway cards or maybe like a smaller overpair like 9s or 10s. So I decided to bet out for $100 targeting those hands. Only the big blind ends up calling for the remaining of a stack, which was $95, and the cutoff folds. The turn's a jack and the river's a 4, and I end up winning. Not sure what he had, but we scoop in a nice pot.
Thank you, man.
At this point, we're less than 2 hours in, the session is going really great, and I'm up over $700 in less than 2 hours. So, in this next hand, we have ace-jack off in the big blind. There's an early position player who limps for $3, the cutoff makes it $16, I flat in the big blind, and the limper calls. So we're going 3 ways to a jack 8-6 rainbow flop. It checks to the cutoff who bets $16 again, I call, and the limper goes all in for $60. After the cutoff folds, I have an easy call, and we hold against jack 10 offsuit.
Showdown, please. You got ace jack, pair jack. It's jack 10 v ace jack. You got it.
In the very next orbit, we somehow pick up aces again, but this time in the big blind. There are 4 limps to me, and I make it $25. Only the cutoff calls. The flop comes king 9-7 with 2 spades. I bet out for $25, and he jams the rest of his stack for $60 total. I obviously call, and he ends up showing queen 5 of spades. The runout comes clean, and we scoop in a nice pot. At this point at our table, the game wasn't super great, so I asked for a table change. I think this is actually really important for people that are trying to make money playing poker. Once you realize that your table isn't good, or a lot of people are just buying in for short, I think it's a good time to just go to the floor and ask for a table change and hope to get placed at a good table. We waste no time in jumping into the action when in one of our first hands we pick up jack 10 of spades under the gun. There's a $7 button straddle and I raise things up to $20. The under the gun +1 player calls and the button calls. So we're going 3 ways to a ace jack 10 with 2 clubs flop. We flop bottom 2 and I choose to bet out for $30. I instantly get raised to $60 by the under the gun 1 player. And it's already getting suspicious, but I have to call, so I do. The turn's a deuce of hearts, and when he bets out for $90, I had to ask myself if I thought my hand was better than his hand, because with only 200 left in his stack, the only sizing left on the river was all in. If I call here and I don't hit a jack or a 10, will I just have to fold the river? After thinking it through, I couldn't find many bluffs that would take this line. A random ace wouldn't do this, and that is basically all I'm beating. I think he just either has a better 2-pair than I do, or he just flopped Broadway. Called me a nit, but I ended up just folding the turn and decided to move on. Let me know what you guys think about this hand. I don't know. This is a really weird spot. So I was actually a little late in recording this hand, but I have 7-6 of diamonds in the small blind, and I limp when there's a $6 button shadow. The under the gun 1 player also limps before the low jack makes it $20. We both end up making the call, so we're going 3 ways to a ace 10-2 flop with 2 diamonds. So we flop a flush draw, and when it checks to the low jack, he bets out for $30. I think my only option is to call here, so that's what I do. The turn's a jack of diamonds, so we nail our flush on the turn. I check him flow, and he checks right back. So we're going heads up to a river that comes at offsuit 9. I wanted to bet out a size that an ace would call, so I bet out for $60, and he quickly calls, which makes me think that I could have probably went a little larger here, and looking at the pot size, I probably could have for sure. So there's an old saying, when you can't beat 'em, join 'em. I decided to put on the button straddle and bump things up to $6. The small blind makes it 26. The under the gun calls, the hijack calls, and when I look down at ace king off on the button, I decide to raise things up to $150. I think I actually went a little too big, and I think a correct sizing is probably around 100 to 125, but it ends up working out when they all fold, and to be honest, with all the dead money in the middle, I'm pretty happy with taking it down without having to see a flop. The last hand of the session, and we pick up aces for the 3rd time. I'm in early position, and the under the gun player calls for 3, and I decide to overlimp. I get instantly punished when the button just calls, both blinds call, and we're going 5 ways to a flop. So the flop comes king jack 4 with 2 spades. It checks to me, and I need to start thinning out the field, so I bet for $15, and both the big blind and the under the gun player call. The turn's 10 of clubs. I know this might seem like a scare card, but in a limp pot, my opponent's ranges are almost infinite, and there's still so many hands that I could get value from, such as a bad king, or flush draws, straight draws. I decide that I still need to bet my hand for value, so I bet for $40. They both end up calling. So at this point, I just kind of want to get the showdown, but when the river comes the deuce of hearts, and it checks to me, I'm in a bit of a predicament. Hands that were beating me were already beating me, and would have most likely check raised me when I bet on the turn. Long story short, do not play like me because I'm a fish, and just raise aces. I decided that this river was too good for me not to bet again, and I decided to bet for $125. After a decently long tank, the big blind decides to call, and we scoop a decent sized pot, but in a dirty way. After that mess, the table started to break, so I decided to call it a session and book a nice win. After just under 4 hours, I was in for $400 and out for $1,455, so a profit of $1,055. It felt good to book a nice win, and I hope you guys enjoyed the first vlog. Hope to see you guys again soon.
You can just edit this, so
Yeah.
do the intro and then do the other songs. Okay.
Welcome to my vlog.